Fuck. All right, we're rolling.
Rolling.
Planet B
Presents.
Cult and Culture Podcast.
Welcome to episode 22 of the Cult and Culture Podcast. I'm Justin Pearson.
And I'm Luke Hinshaw.
And today we will be discussing all kinds of crazy shit with Mario Rubalcaba, who is an amazing drummer in a bunch of bands.
Insane drummer.
Yeah, insane drummer. I mean, okay, Earthless, Clikatat Ikatowi, 411, Chicano-Christ. Oh, no, you didn't play drums tonight. You played guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Rock from the Crypt, half of Hot Snakes. I mean, the dude is just Sea of Tombs, off. He's like, the dude rips. And it was weird because I love the guy forever, and I've known him forever, and it was cool to kind of catch up. And a few nights before we recorded this, him and I basically had a very similar conversation, so we just kind of went back through it again. But it's pretty wild. I guess his ability to drum with his ability to skateboard, and it's had this like really strange fluidity to it. It's almost like riding a pool or something on a skateboard. Like his drumming kind of seemed like that. It just had all these like all the angular stuff and all the weird transitions were just seamless. And so I trip out on watching that guy drum. He's one of the best. He is one of the fucking best. Anyhow, the history it was just insane and also bizarre. And it was like we needed to have this podcast come with like a family tree or something because it goes everywhere. Yeah, I don't know. The dude's awesome. I love him, and he's an incredible human being and very talented human being. And whatever the DNA that guy got, he lucked out. So here we go. Ready to drop in? So there's like there's two sort of things that I thought I would like to talk about. One of them, well, we'll just start with one. We'll get to the other one later. But the first thing is I would like to talk about your skateboarding. Yeah. And if you think, so to me when I think of skateboarding and then I see you drumming, it's to me this might be really weird, but when I watch you play, there's this fluidity that reminds me of like sort of skateboarding, navigating like a pool or something, you know, where like there's the transitions are seamless, it's very smooth, and it seems for your drumming, it's when I watch you, it seems effortless, but like, you know, there's complexity, but it's not like, so I'm so used to like sitting with Gabe Serbian where it's very angular and jagged and fucking just you know, like almost like all 90-degree angles, but with you it just seems like this sort of wave, I guess. Do you see a transition in how your brain works? Because okay, so you started off skateboarding before drumming, or I'm assuming?
Nah, drums first.
Really?
Yeah, drums, fuck, man, since I can remember.
Like as a little kid?
Yeah,
Whoa.
like whatever the toy kit was of the day. It was like, probably like a Mickey Mouse drum set or something.
Whoa.
So yeah, like at 4 years old, 5 years old, like getting the little toy kit. But I mean, my mom says like you were just fucking crawling around hitting shit, you know. Like she said she made like a little drum or whatever. Like I was always hitting on something. So you know, I think I just I was just born with that kind of tendency to like hit on stuff. And then but I got a real kit when I was like 6 years old. Had a neighbor had like a Japanese knockoff like Ludwig kit. She sold it to my mom for like $60. It was just a really cool like Beatles kind of knockoff type thing. And yeah, that was my first kit, and that's kind of what I had for a long time up until maybe like it was like 9 or 10, and then I think it just was just too thrashed and got into BMX bikes or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And then skateboarding came pretty soon after that, and then with skateboarding, music came back into the fold of like meeting people that were into punk and wanting to play music. And
so when you start skating, what was it like? Late 80s or mid 80s?
Early 80s.
Early 80s.
But it goes further back because I had an uncle that I had a couple pretty cool uncles that were in the 70s, like teenagers during the 70s, and one of them, he surfed and skated when the 70s skate boom was big, and there's all the skate parks here. And so I'd go to my grandma's house where they were all my mom was working. I was like pretty much single, mom.
Yeah.
And I started going to my grandma's house every day after school, or whatever. I was like still kindergarten or something. And he had skateboarder magazine like issues all around. So I just fucking look at those all day and like play the 8-track, tape, whatever console and stuff. And so first 2 bands I was like super into was Deep Purple, the first album with like the first singer with like that song Hush on it. And then Grand Funk were an American band, which is actually a great album. And the drum, like aside from that hit song, there's songs on there that the drumming by Don Brewer is just like was one of my biggest influences. Whoa. So like him and like Ian Pace from Deep Purple were like there's shit that he's done. Don Brewer's doing. It's like I took to like Clikatat, kind of the tribal, like all the tom heavy shit. So I would listen to those 2 8-tracks all fucking day and look at skateboarder mags,
Wow.
And then I would ride his skateboard, but like on my knees or whatever, just like in the driveway. But I never really went to skate parks. And then when my parents were getting divorced, my mom and I actually moved into my grandparents' house, and we just like had a room in the back, and so that's just where I would play drums and like kind of learn just hit shit,
Whoa.
And I think I saw what's the Who movie that was out? The Kids Are All Right, or like whatever. Like I saw that, and I just fucking like.
Yeah, we've been watching the theatrics of Keith Moon, obviously.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Like blowing shit up.
Yeah.
So with that being said, like my one friend that I had at the time, we saw it together. My mom had just like saved up all this money and got me like a new like snare head and like a new pair of sticks. And we saw that Who movie, and we were like, oh, let's destroy my drums.
Yeah.
So we like started stabbing the snare head and stuff and breaking. She's like, the fuck you doing? So I did. Took a while to get that shit fixed again. But,
wow.
But yeah, I've been playing drums since I was a kid. Been around skateboarding and like aware of it since I was pretty young as well. And then I was just always really into like hard kind of rock like music, like really into it from a young age. So I think that led to me getting into metal, first predominantly, like hard rock and metal. And then after being turned on to punk and like hardcore, I was just like, it just totally changed my whole course of where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think like maybe in the early 80s, like when MTV and stuff happened, like, if you could get a glimpse of like certain things on there, like Devo, and also I remember like seeing Ozzy stuff, like those were the things that really like, or maybe Kiss, but more so like musically with Ozzy, I feel like for the metal side of things, like I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, that guy's crazy. And like as a kid, it like seemed very, enticing.
Totally. I mean, I'm going to say it was MTV. I think I remember it being around like 1982 was like that year. And because for me, it all like, I was either in 4th or 5th grade. And like seeing the first wave of videos on MTV, like you said, like Ozzy, and then you had Van Halen, Hot for Teacher, and like Quiet Riot, and they just showed those videos all day long. And then Iron Maiden came out with like Run to the Hills, off of Number of the Beast, and that record changed my life. Like I bought that on tape. Somehow I snuck that away from my mom, and that was just a game changer for me. So I was just like full into like that was my like. I'm really into metal now, type of thing. Like, I mean, I had like Sabbath and that kind of stuff, Judas Priest, Judas Priest, but like that was like early wave, but like Maiden was like the first real thing that was like kind of took it to another level of like that, like I guess it was like the new wave of like British heavy metal. I didn't know about that back then, but like, it just had a fresh sound to it,
And then so. Obviously metal and stuff took over, and then the link from skateboarding to punk is very obvious. I mean, it was like it was everywhere. If you look at any of the pro skaters of the time, they always like you'd always see like a Misfit shirt or like Sam Hain stickers and shit, like whatever like whatever it was. Also too, like the pus head correlation. So it just seems like we were all, if you were into skateboarding, you were definitely gonna have to get into some fucked up music, no matter what, but. So, but again, I would like to talk about like the transition and the way, or not the transition, but the correlation between the way you physically play drums and skateboarding. Do you think there's a connection there?
Yeah.
Or
I
is
was
that
gonna
like a
say
weird-
I was
is
gonna
that a-
say I totally avoided the question you asked, but like
Purposely
no,
avoided
no,
it?
no. I just got totally off track
No,
and just
but all
started
that shit was
blabbing
great.
and stuff.
Yeah,
but like
I mean, yeah.
to back to what you asked, I mean, I don't think about it like not consciously,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
I think the
stylistically-
way that I'm like wired,
Yeah.
whether it be like mentally and physically, they both feel like the same thing to me in a big there's a big connection there. So like, I mean, obviously there's muscle memory that goes with skating that if you haven't done it in a long time, it fucking doesn't get any easier.
Yeah.
And same thing with drums. I mean, like, you know, if I haven't played in a month or two or something, for some reason that rarely happens, but it can hurt, you know, like, I mean, my arms will be fucking sore, but like I tried going skating the other day, even just for like half an hour, and I was just like, it felt like I ran like 3 miles.
Really?
And I was just
Wow.
like breathing.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. They just both feel natural, and it just, you know, there's, a feeling that it just feels like it's just what I do. I don't know. It's just, I just feel good doing both things. And, you know, there's a couple skate tricks that I still can do. And then it's like, to me, it's like the same thing of like fucking hitting the cymbals super hard or something, you know, and like it has like that same kind of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Or something, you know, I don't know.
The execution of it.
Yeah.
What about like, you know, because I was never great at skateboarding, but I was really, really into it. And then I started playing music, and then I broke my wrist, and I was like, oh fuck, I gotta make a decision here. Like, you're kind of like in an insane situation because like, you're doing both,
right?
You know, or you were doing both, and then was there a point where like skateboarding kind of took? Because so you were pro at some point, right? And then and then you just kind of like, what happened there? Because then you just stopped skating, or
what? When I was doing the skating thing, I mean, I played music, but like that was obviously just like garage bands and stuff. And then I'm trying to think, when I joined that band 411, that was my first recording and touring band.
Okay.
We did 2 US tours, and that was the first time I ever like jumped in a van and played venues and did the thing, you know.
But did anybody say like, dude, stop skating right now, like while you're doing this?
No, we were all so naive. I mean, I was 18, you
Yeah.
know, and they're just like, oh, I mean, yeah, they were like, don't fucking hurt yourself, you know, but like none of us had money on the table. We were just like trying to fucking pay the gas tank, you know, the gas, and not lose our asses, and you know. But I think back, and it's like I would like skate like parks or whatever was around, or go street skating like before. I'd go after the show. I'd meet up with like skaters and that'd come to our shows and stuff, because it was like a, you know, kind of intertwined scene. Like, because we were kind of more, it wasn't the straight edge scene, but obviously like Dan had like that following and stuff, and then I had a little bit of the skate following, so everyone was just like, oh, let's go skate before the show, and I was like, all right, let's do, you know, like go ahead, like jump down like stairs and stuff, and be like, I'd come back with like cuts and everything.
Did you ever have a problem where you were on tour and then you're like, we have to go home because I broke my wrist or something?
No, luckily not. The only time that happened was actually before the last Rocket show. That was in like 2005 or something like that, when we had like, we played that big hotel downtown, and like a month and a half before that, I was skating at Washington Street, and I collided with this guy Glenn that helped build the park, and he, like, we were going over the hump, and we just like kind of just nicked each other in a weird way, you know, but like I hit my wrist, and then like his finger, like he dislocated 2 fingers, and we were just kind of like, you know, and then like I was like looking at my wrist, and it was just swollen, and then just kept getting like bigger and bigger, and it was like black and blue, and it wasn't broken, but like there was no way I could like practice and stuff. So like maybe 2 weeks before the show, I was like started feeling all right, and then it was just like it was the most odd feeling to try and like hit your snare drum, and then like being just like, oh, this is how I normally hit it, and then feeling like just electricity going all the way, because it's like you weren't ready yet.
With
like,
every single hit.
I'm just like, oh my god, this is gonna be, how am I gonna play 2.5 hours?
Whoa.
You know, like in the last show of Rocket from the Crypt, and people are flying all over the fucking world to like come see it, you know.
Wait, last show?
well, when we broke up the first time, you know.
Yeah.
And then
The fake farewell tour.
yeah. But
you
it worked
ended up
out.
playing.
Yeah, I ended up. Yeah, I mean, I just thank goodness for like Ice and like Tiger Balm and that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Get sponsored by Ice and Tiger Balm.
Yeah. Where were we at?
I don't know. That's some crazy shit though. The skateboarding stuff, I guess.
Oh, but like skating and playing shows.
Stuff.
No, that's the only time that I ever had like a close call with that, I guess. But then like trying to think, because I'd take my board on tour no matter where I went, because it was just like there's skate spots.
Yeah.
You know? I'm a skateboarder. And then I was playing with Blackheart Procession, and we were in Europe, and we were at a distributor label called Concurrent that was around at the time, and we were doing 2 shows with Fugazi, and so we were all getting the gear from the same spot, and I had this cruiser board with me with like old soft like OJ wheels and stuff, and just like for cruising around the city, you know. And then Ian Mackay was out there, like he was helping us load out stuff. Like he's like, you guys, he was so cool. It's like, you guys need help loading, you know, your stuff out.
Yeah.
Not their stuff.
Yeah.
Like they were done. Like, he could have just bailed and be like, fuck you guys. Like Concurrent was like 3 stories up, you know, and he's like, you know, helping us like lug fucking big old bass cabs and shit. And just down for the cause. And then I was like, hey, like I knew he skated back in the day. And so I'm like, you want to try these old, you know, OJs out, whatever? And he's just like, nope.
Oh yeah.
Like, nope. Can't touch it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why? Like, I'm like, you like skating? He's like, yep, love it. I'd love to ride that board, but I can't do it. And he's like, I have 3 other faces counting on me, you know, like, depending on me to play these shows and stuff. It's like, if I hit one rock, fall down, you know, and like fuck it all up. Yeah. So I'm fucking their shit up.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
I thought about it differently.
Just like, I don't give a fuck about anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And then John, one time I was skating Burnside. Oh my God. Like, yeah, those guys were terrified because at Burnside's like a gnarly park. Yeah. And I'm like doing like inverts and like flying over the hip, like, and like, I think I fucking ate shit like really hard. It looked way worse. Like, it was like Pete Rose slide. And like, they're like looking at the top. There's like, like their eyes are all big. And like John was like, it's like, man, remember there's 5 other faces counting on you. So I kind of thought about it differently since then. I was just like, you know what, like on tour, I won't bring my board, or if I, whatever, you know, like, I don't bring my board.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I leave it at home. At least I have for a long time.
I remember I think the Locust toured with Dead and Gone, and like, maybe, I don't know if it was, maybe we weren't touring with them. Either way, Dead and Gone was on tour. They went from the Bay Area to, I think their first show was like Denver, and they were playing a skate park, and Brian Stern, the bass player, was like, cool, I'm gonna skate. Like 3 minutes at the park, breaks his wrist, tours over. They had to drive straight back from fucking Colorado, and didn't even do like the whole 5-month or 5-week tour. You know?
Yeah, I bet they're fucking pissed.
Yeah, but that's probably what happened to Ian. You know, he's like, oh yeah, let me grab that, and then just breaks a wrist or whatever, and then tour's over.
Yeah, no fun.
So this is maybe a fucked up question to ask, but was 411 a straight edge band, or was it just?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, not.
Because that would
consciously
put you in the pocket there.
Right. I mean, obviously Dan came from that background, and Josh and Kevin, the other 2 guys, were part of that scene. But I don't think Kevin or Josh were. I don't know. Maybe they were straight edge at some point because they went to all those shows and stuff and were a part of that whole thing for a long time. But Kevin was more from a metal background like me. And Dan was definitely at some point, you know, straight edge and stuff. But when we started,
didn't he have he has like poison free tattooed on him, and then I heard he like got used to be above the poison free tattoo.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that tattoo stands of these days, but I'm sure when I see him, I'll observe it.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we started that band, I mean, I joined last, you know, because they had recorded that 7-inch before I joined the band, and we just kind of wanted to do something different that was just more blending, you know, the melodic side of hardcore, but then also Kevin having this kind of hard metal edge, you know, like vibe, and just doing whatever kind of felt good. And when I joined, like the songs just started like kind of coming together really fast with what Kevin was writing, and then just like being able to play to what he wrote, you know. And plus, I mean, for me, like I was coming from Vista.
Yeah.
And like I only played in a band with my close skate friend, Mark Hostetter. You know, and we
Wait, what did Mark go on to do?
He didn't really do any bands after. Yeah, like he worked in the skate industry.
Yeah.
And
like Demented or something, or
Tracker.
Oh, Tracker. Okay,
yeah. So which Tracker was at the time like Trans World.
Oh yeah.
Tracker, and then they started a kind of a bigger like distribution thing later on. But yeah, that's who I joined my first band with, and we had a bunch of different cornball names, you know, that kind of grew. But then like our band that we did a couple shows with was called Committed. And at first it was North County Committed, and then it was like trying to be like the you know, North County hardcore. Yeah. And then like, you know, and we just played parties, but like we used to practice at this band called Blood Lake, which was a band. They were like in Oceanside, Tri-City area, but they were fucking gnarly. So Simon, that was in Crash Worship, played drums in Blood Lake, and it was pretty good punk rock. But his drumming was huge influence for me, especially like for Clikatat, because he, you know, Crash Worship was all tribal, you know, kind of nutty, like out there, you know, stuff. But he had that kind of vibe in Blood Lake, where like he had a typical drum set, but then he had like a little, like a snare drum, almost like a timbali or something like that, like tuned all weird. But he'd do all these fucked up tribal beats with like, you know, totally adrenalized like hardcore. Yeah. So just in like, he kind of had that kick drum thing that I was just like that boom, 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 like constant, and like it was just over the top. So we would practice at their house. So seeing that guy play that kind of music was just like, just blew my like creative mind open. And I think that like,
did you ever play in Crash Worship?
No. I only saw them a couple times, and that was really cool.
I mean, a lot of people like Aaron Montaigne played in it, and Jose Palafox played in it. Like random people would just be in it every now and then.
Yeah. They would kind of have a huge ensemble, it seemed like, and stuff. But no, that would have been fun though. But yeah. So, those early days of my first kind of band or whatever, you know, we just played parties, local parties, and that was it. So getting into 411 was super eye-opening as to like, wow, you know, we can like actually go and tour and recording at West Beach, you know, was like, wow, it was like a real studio, you know. And,
because of like, you think because of Dan maybe?
Yeah, and just like, you know, he had his ties to like Frank at Nemesis and like whatever
Cargo?
What was Cargo? But what was the label? Headhunter? Yeah, and just like kind of that whole thing. Yeah. You know? So,
which is also
compared to what I had no ties. You know?
Yeah. But do you think that might have like, because then you ended up doing stuff with Cargo. I mean, I guess it's like kind of an incestuous scene, like Southern California or whatever. So it would make sense.
Yeah.
Cruising back to that spot. Okay, so I want to ask. I mean, I really want to dive into Clikatat stuff, but did Chicano-Christ happen before Clikatat?
Yeah. Okay. So that was all around 411.
Okay.
Because Kevin Murphy, the 411 guitar player, he lived with Ron Martinez.
Okay, because we talked about this the other night, and I was fucking blown away. Like, you got to tell me this story again, because I was like, dude, that is so hilarious. It came up because we were talking about like Brujeria or something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you tell me the story again?
Totally. It's hold on here. Let me think back. Okay, so practicing at the Fat House, which was Ron's house, you know, there was like just typical punk house.
Yeah. Was he in Final Conflict? He was in it.
Yeah. And they were kind of on hiatus at the time. I forget what the band he had at the time going on, but anyways, like that's where 411 practiced. Kevin lived there. A couple other people. Vadim Rubin lived there. He was in a band called Half Off.
Yeah.
And
I always thought they were from the East Coast.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But they were or whatever, Buena Park.
Yeah.
So we'd practice there, and I would go up every weekend and just stay the weekend at Ron's house, and then ended up being pretty close friends with him at the time. So we'd always go to like Zed Records and go record shopping, go to shows, you know, like all weekend and stuff. And then we went to go see Chicano-Christ play, and they were killer. That was a great show. And we get back after seeing them, and then I think we had just like smoked weed or something stupid, and then like, oh, we were listening to that Brujeria 7-inch, the first one that came out, and then just like Ronald just started laughing like out of control, and just like, it's like, oh my God, he's like, I got it. And he's like, Chicano-Christ. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? And then he's like, well, like Brujeria is a fake band, you know what I mean? It's like a drug cartel. It was like, I think it was like Billy Gold from Faith No More, and like that's the other guy, Dean. I don't know. He worked at the college or something like that. But it was, you know, it was a total just fake,
like a spoof.
Yeah, you know, on this whole thing. And he's like, dude, we'll be Brujeria's rival band. And it's like, we'll be vegetarian homeboys, you know, and like, he's like, Chicano-Christ. And it was like, you know, so we just started, I don't know, elaborating on this like masterpiece of an idea, obviously, that we're still fucking talking about 30 damn years later. So we were like, okay, who are we going to get for the band? And then like Kevin, we're like, oh, he's the token white guy, so we'll name him Casper or something like that. And then our buddy Steve, he was like a short little Mexican guy. He played bass in a band called Free Bass. It was just 2 bass players in the drum machine. And we're like, yeah, he's perfect.
Yeah.
He's short and he's kind of stuffy, and he's like, and he's all pissed off.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we just came up with the whole cast of characters. And I think I took one of my grandma's pictures of Jesus and like did the bandana and like the whiteout, like the Vato X's, and put like a joint in his mouth. And then we wrote the lyrics in one weekend. We practiced 2 times, did the 7-inch, and we played 1 show. And then the 1 show was actually supposed to be Rage Against the Machine's first show in a garage in Irvine. Yeah. And we played with a couple other like Mission Impossible, some other like straight edge bands. And then Rage was all set up, ready to go inside this garage, and like literally like Zach was like doing the whole like talking up like, yeah, the fuck the system, you know, like, y'all fucking you with me or what? Yeah. And then, like they're right, like literally about to click into the song, and then you hear this fucking like knock 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 on the garage door, and it was the Irvine police.
Wow.
Just like lift up the door, and it's like, oh.
Yeah. Fuck, that's great.
So,
so now's the time you should get that band back together.
It's kind of funny though, like, I mean, I played guitar in that band, so, and Kevin played drums, so it was just like an excuse for us to like switch around and have fun and do that. But yeah, we were actually surprised how many people actually kind of like liked it,
I think at the time Chicano-Christ was such an important band to a lot of people. And I think that, you know, like they're on Vermiform, like and then so like there was this Chicano-Christ thing, which just obviously got all the attention, you know, because of it. So the joke worked, I guess, or whatever. Okay, so I would love to just dive into the insane thing that Clikatat Ikatowi is, because I feel like it kind of came out of nowhere, and I still to this day, like, I mean, you can kind of reference certain elements of it, but like it was like the most bizarre band of that time, you know. And I remember like seeing you guys play with like Man is the Bastard at the Huntington Library. And it was funny to watch people who are like, those guys all had pretty eclectic music taste, like, but to watch Man is the Bastard just lose their fucking shit over you guys, you know, like, I mean, obviously, and it's justified, like, it was an incredible band, but like to watch these dudes that are just so gnarly and they're like this, you know, they're the ones that coined power violence, and they're like watching this like sort of post-punk, like almost like a, I don't know, like where like, fuck, I don't even want to say the influences that I was like, what I saw as a, you know, as a younger person, like when it was happening, but like like, is there anything you can say like how it started and maybe like why? Because it was bizarre musically.
Well, I met Scott. I mean, going back to like where I met Scott was like going back to my first band, like Committed, and we recorded this demo in off of Lacadia Boulevard. There used to be a house by this band, Manifest Destiny, and they're like an old Mystic Records band, but they had like a 4-track studio in the garage, and that band Blood Lake turned into a band called Acid Bath, and Scott, he was like 15 at the time, was managing this band.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're 15-year-old managing a band of like 27-year-olds
Whoa.
or something like
But
that.
Scott at the time was like booking like
yeah, he did
giant shows and
right.
like,
He was
Vandals
booking
and,
like Tied Down Productions. Like he was
Yeah.
booking like all these out of town bands,
Yeah.
which was pretty insane and kind of another podcast show in itself.
yeah.
I keep telling people, I'm like, interview this guy. It's
Yeah.
like a 13-year-old kid booking RKO. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's where I met Scott for the first time. And then fast forward a few years later, I did like a couple improvised shows with this guy. I think they called him Bacta Tim.
Oh yeah.
And
He was in Tit Wrench for a minute too.
yeah, he was like one of Bob's friends.
Yeah.
And then he was from North County, close to where I was. And somehow he got a hold of my number, and he'd always just call me. And I was like, whatever. I talked to him, and I kind of thought he was like a little freaky and weird and stuff, but he just would not stop bugging me about trying to play. And so finally he kind of wore me down, and like
That's all it
I was
takes,
like, all right, like he's like, hey, you want to do these shows at the underground UCSD, at the underground spot?
Oh yeah.
And so the first one we did was with Antioch Arrow.
Oh, I saw
And,
that.
yeah, so it's just me and him, and then this dude Gunner that played
Yeah.
bass, and
Who was also in Tit Wrench.
yeah, Tit Wrench, yeah. So I do not remember musically what it was at all, like what I did, or I think it was just kind of just noise shit. But that's where I think I met Ryan first, and then hooked up with Scott again. And like Scott's like, oh, we should jam sometime, dude. You know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where we connected.
So heroin was kind of not happening.
I think it was. They were still a band.
But
Yeah.
but maybe Scott.
But I think it was towards the end.
Yeah.
And then C, I knew from skating. I used to skate with C all the
okay.
time at McGill's skate park.
Was he a pro skater too?
He was sponsored. He probably could have been pro.
Yeah.
You know, but he kind of stopped after that and got into like music. And
Yeah.
So we'd skate at McGill's all the time, and knew each other from that. And then I remember him wearing Pitchfork shirts and stuff. And then like I knew of Pitchfork because they used to play at the Blood Lake House, and they play together. So there was these connections there already. And then after that, that thing with Tim and Gunner, I think he called it Fervor. And then after that, Scott called me and said, hey, like, let's try and, jam. I was thinking of like, having Ryan like hook up and stuff. And then like, Matt Goldsby or whatever, before he was C. And then,
Wait, can we talk about that? What do you mean before he was C? I thought his name was always C. Matt Goldsby.
I don't think it was.
Really?
I think C came after. I think he just changed that or added that on. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. Sorry, C, if I'm wrong here, but
Yeah.
like, I just always knew you as Matt Goldsby.
Yeah,
the skate park and stuff. But
It's
but
funny
yeah.
how a lot of those people are changing. Like
yeah,
Ron Anarchy's now Maximilian, but
yeah.
he's still Ron Anarchy. To a
I know,
lot
and
of
it's hard. I like bite my tongue. I'm like, run.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, and then I think the first jam that we ever had was at my house. I lived at my grandparents' house from when I was like 14, 15 up until I ended up moving out. And we just fucking all just buckled into my room and just kind of just started blasting out like whatever. Like we didn't, like no one had like a specific
There was
riff.
nobody- no
Ryan
one
couldn't
died.
even play bass at first. So he was kind of like hitting, he sounded like Void, like just hitting open strings and hitting whatever notes he could. He couldn't play worth shit. I can tell you that. And like Scott just was kind of like playing, like making up songs, coming up, and we just locked in, and somehow that like improvised came out to be Affirmation, I think was the song. No. DNA Time Bomb. I don't know. I'd have to like hear it again, but it's like one of the more hardcore songs that we did in the demo tape. And that kind of just came out sort of like improvised, and then we just honed in on these couple parts. And made a song out of it, and then taught Ryan how to actually like stay on a couple parts and stuff. I have that tape somewhere. But yeah, then we just kind of started playing more, and then like, you know, practicing wherever we could. We used to practice that Moonlight Music, and
That's the place by the La Paloma Theater.
yeah, because Scott worked there for a long time.
Yeah, which was crazy too, because so my perspective of it was, I always thought like watching you and Ryan playing bass like locked in. That was like the groove and the rhythm, which were like partially. I mean, fuck, man, because I guess at the time like. I really was focused on the bass playing. I played bass, but I was like always kind of watching like the connection that you two had, and so it seemed really good to me. And then there was like Scott, who had at the time had like what I thought was a lot of pedals. I don't know
totally,
but yeah, I mean,
it was
and I was just, and it was always like the guitar was always just like, you know, and I could never really like get like there was never like, you know, the hook or like the guitar. It was always just like the bass line was keeping it down, and then there was just like this swirly fucking crazy shit that Scott did, and then which it was funny too, like watching you guys. Like I think it's one of those things, like I want to enjoy the music and I do feel the music, but I'm always fixated on like the musicianship, like what is that person doing or how is this happening, and I can't like. I mean, occasionally when I watch music, I'll bob my head or I'll move, but like I really am like laser focused on like, I don't know, like the schematics of what's happening. Yeah. But then, so there was like the weirdest thing for me, and then to watch, and then there was Matt or C, you know, just like vocally totally had like Ian Curtis vibes. Yeah. But again, I was like, where's the like it was such a strange thing because it didn't seem like structurally like here's the verse and the chorus. It was just like, what the fuck is happening? There's just an insane groove with the drums and the bass, and then just like the shit happening on top of it everywhere. Not shit in bad way, but like stuff. Like here's this and the sounds and the weird voice and whatever, and it was just like the weirdest thing.
I think Ryan not knowing how to play at first, and then gradually learning how to play really well, in my opinion, for what we were doing, was kind of the catalyst. And like I had to, you know, and Scott not really like having like, oh, like here's a set song and here's this, I got this riff or something, you know, like we would just start playing and Scott would just kind of start doing whatever, making sounds. And I think that for me was like I had to step up and create something for them, you know, for Ryan to play off of. And like, you know, so I just started
with the beat.
Yeah, so I just started coming up with like, you know, patterns, and what my head was like patterns, you know, like identity crisis, you know, you know, coming up with something like that, you know, like, and like so they would play it to me, and Ryan would just kind of like circle around whatever like I was doing, and you know, that would get his like mind working to come up and like get better and better and better, or do, you know, and also be in time. And then Scott could just kind of do whatever he did, you know, because he was already a good player. Yeah. I mean, he just wanted to do different shit, you know. And then Scott's ear is so different than anyone I've ever fucking met in the world, you know. So like I might think he might be coming from Detroitin, but in his head, he's coming from Christina Aguilera. It's like, what the fuck, dude? Like, you ever heard any of his compilation tapes?
What do you mean compilation?
Like he would, you know, like make a tape of comps of bands that he likes. The weirdest fucking tapes ever in the fucking world. Yeah. Like, you know, be like Void, and then like Articles of Faith demo, and then jump into like Britney Spears. Yeah. And then like the Freeway Report of like, you know, there's a lot of traffic going on the 805, and then like jump back into, like, it was just like so eclectic, and I'd be like, man, your tapes really like fuck me up. Yeah.
But that makes sense, and that's, I mean, that's a total San Diego thing.
Yeah. You know, which... Yeah. But back to the Clikatat thing, like I think that enabled us to just kind of create these, you know, pieces where there was nothing really said about how we, you know, like it didn't have to be this way. It didn't have to, you know, like the song doesn't go like this. But we'd come up with like the pattern of like, you know, my drums, I would do my drums, and Ryan would do his thing on the bass, and then Scott would just fucking create whatever these soundscapes, and then have some riffs here and there. And C would just kind of do his poetry thing and kind of do that. And so
it was like poetry then. There was really never like a chorus or anything.
Right. And, you know, but I mean, like they turned into songs, you know, and like for us, and like, yeah, it's just, it's a trip to think back. Like, all right, it's done. You know, these songs are done, or this song is done. Oh, cool. We came up with this. That's pretty cool. Like, yeah.
I mean, it was the crazy. Like, also too, maybe it was the timing because for me, and this is maybe just like a skewed perspective, but being in like hardcore and like we were, like I was always like really tuned into like Ebullition and the Heart Attack and magazine that Kent did and stuff, and that was like the world that I kind of was sort of like honed in on. But then Antioch Arrow came, and I think maybe because of Nation Ulysses or something. Yeah. But out of like Antioch Arrow, I feel was then Clikatat, and then it was just like all the weird shit, and it was the reaction from these sort of like hardcore purists like calling it like art, like artsy fartsy shit, and I was like, oh, but it's so much cooler than just like the normal shit that everyone's been doing, and especially I think maybe people in San Diego were able to accept it and really really latch onto it and grab onto it in a way that like maybe someone like Kent McClard or people that were just strictly into hardcore couldn't manage, because we were used to like the sort of mindset of like the mixtape that Scott made, like you said. We were used to like fucking seeing, I don't even like Crash Worship play with, Daddy Longlegs or whatever weird ass shit.
And it's even like Pitchfork, totally. Was such a departure from anything that was like hardcore. You know what I mean? Like they were, at the time it was like, it took me a few listens to kind of like hone in on what they were doing, like, because I wasn't into like super melodic stuff.
So with Pitchfork, were you interested in what was before Pitchfork?
And I didn't really know. I mean, like I just liked hard music. Like I was into like Discharge and whatever, like more kind of straight narrow-minded like hardcore, and then like hearing Pitchfork was like, oh, there's still energy there, but there's like melodic stuff going on, and then like Joey's drums were like really cool, and then like John's guitar playing was so different at the time too, but like Rick's vocals, like like it was cool, like seeing it live. I got to see him like 2 or 3 times, so it's like I was just like, oh, I mean it just I liked it, and I just thought San Diego always kind of had such a eclectic range of bands that, like you said, would play together. And compared to other places I think around the country or in the state, it's like if people were into hardcore, they were just really into like hardcore. Definitely like Antioch Arrow, and like even like the end of Heroin, was getting a little bit different. But then like Antioch Arrow and then Clikatat, like kind of just said later to whatever was thought that we had to like be like or whatever.
Normal music or average music or whatever. That's crazy, because I wonder, so bringing it mentioning Pitchfork, like I wonder where that first Drive Like Jehu record fits into the timing of things, because I wonder if Clikatat was a thing that maybe might have, I don't know,
we were
inspired.
After Jehu.
Really?
Because
I guess it would have been like a year or two after.
Yeah, a couple years after. And I always forget about this. Like the first Jehu record, I was in the studio at West Beach finishing up 411 recording, and then Jehu was in the mixing room mixing that first album.
Oh.
And I remember walking in, and Donald Cameron was with like John and Rick, and I was like, hey, look, I didn't know them back then, but like we kind of had seen each other.
Yeah.
And so I was like, hey, what's up? Like, you guys are from San Diego, right? And I was like, yeah. And then I remember hearing like what was coming out of the speakers in the mixing room. Like I was just like, fuck, this sounds pretty cool.
Some wild shit.
Yeah.
Like especially with the guitar stuff.
Yeah.
So not to jump too far away or around or whatever, but like your relationship with John, that's a big deal. Like obviously,
that came way later.
Way later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
which is actually now a long time ago.
Well, I would like to know. I mean, I want to fill in the gaps between where we were with Clikatat, because I also too I would love to. Okay, before we get to the genre stuff, let's talk about because I still am like, I still wish that something manifested out of that time I saw you in Philly when you were playing for John Hughes, or John Hughes was there.
Oh, right, with Clikatat?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
That was some weird shit.
Yeah.
So I know we talked about it, but so you were saying that like you weren't, because this is like pre-internet, so we were just, everybody just thought there's this new John Hughes movie coming out, and Clikatat was gonna be in the movie.
You know what it was now, because I had a little bit of time to think about it when you brought that up, because that was just such a seriously a 2-night thing, I think, where I'd seen them and met him, and John Hughes, and I think his son, he had a son. They were starting a label. That's what it was. Okay. And it was called Hefty, and so they were starting this label. We used to play Jabberjaw all the time.
Yeah,
and I think that's where. There was a chick that was involved too. I think her name was Jessica. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
So she would come to our shows all the time, and she'd hit us up about, hey, like, thinking of, we're doing this new label called Hefty. It's backed by John Hughes and John Hughes' son. So we were like, oh, I don't know, whatever. Like, and then at least we entertained the idea to listen, and see what they'd say. But it never
happened.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I just thought it was supposed to, because I heard that there was like a new movie that never came out. Like the last John Hughes film never happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think it was ever thinking about being in a movie, but like that label they were trying to do, which I don't know if anything ever happened with that.
Yeah. Well, the folklore that I thought was the story seems cooler.
I'm sure
it would have been just amazing to see you in one of the movies.
Oh, man. Yeah. That would have been cool. Because he was obviously, like, back then, like, the shit.
Yeah. All those films were really inspiring and I think important to people on all walks of life, I guess.
Yeah.
But let's talk about your relationship with John Reese. How did that happen? And then what was the first thing you guys did together?
Well, I joined Rocket from the Crypt. Trying to think
which was
led to that, though.
We did that tour. Locust toured with you guys when you first joined.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was
like one of the first, like probably the second tour I ever did with him. Yeah, because we were like going through the South, I think, and stuff like that.
People fucking hated us, but that was John's goal. Like he was like, let's bum everybody out and bring the Locust.
Yeah,
and we were.
And he just liked it. I mean, eclectic. Yeah. He's never been afraid to like.
Yeah. But his the Rocket fans of Texas do not want the Locust anywhere near them, or like Alabama. Where the fuck were we? We were like all in the South. I just remember like every night being like, "Fuck again!" Like
just getting persecuted.
Yeah, but it was cool. We were down. It was funny because we really obviously grew up with John's work, Pitchfork, and then Jehu.
Yeah.
And then it was cool to just be around him, and to have him, to have that sort of like camaraderie between the bands. But then when you joined, and not to make it weird, but like I do think that Clikatat was a huge influence on the way that that probably like how Gabe Serbian got into drumming, but also like it was a huge influence on everybody at the Locust at the time. Mm-hmm. Even our previous drummer Dave Astor and then me and Bobby and Gabe all were just obviously really into Clikatat, so it made sense. But it was cool to go on tour with you guys in Rocket because we already liked Rocket, but it wasn't, and this is no offense to the band, but like musically it's rock and roll and that's cool, but it's not Clikatat or it's not Jehu, it's not like the fucked up weird shit that our that we were into. But it was cool to see a really awesome band get you as the drummer, because then it was like, fuck, now it's like, I don't know, it added this like extra level of something. I don't want to say like musicianship, but it added like I don't know what like an aesthetic that was really important. I think to people that wouldn't normally just listen to like accessible music, because Rocket's sort of an accessible band.
Yeah.
But that was always like, so anyhow on that tour we were just like, holy fuck, Rocket's like the raddest shit now because you joined, and it was cool just to kind of be around it and like see it on a different level. You know?
That's cool.
We played a pizza place in Little Rock, and it was like, it was like, that was great, and everyone hated us, and everyone loved you guys, and it seemed like a perfect night.
Yeah.
At pizza.
Yeah.
So that your relationship went from there, and then obviously you were brought into the mix with a bunch of John's stuff.
Yeah. So, I was living in Chicago at the time. I lived there for like 3 years, from like '97 to like 2000, and I decided to move there after Clikatat broke up. I did a couple records like really fast with Rob Crow with a Thingy. I think we did like two records in the span of like 6 months or something. It was really fast, and then I was moving, so then that thing came to an end.
Oh wait, real quick, did you do Sea of Tombs when you were in Chicago?
Yeah.
And
so that's where that started from.
What?
So that's where that started from, but that came out of Bill and Jessica that were in the Jacks.
Yeah.
And they were on tour, and they saw Clikatat play with Jesus Lizard at the Brick by Brick, or the Spirit, or whatever it was at the time.
Oh.
And the Jacks played, I think, that night too, and that's where I met Bill and Jessica.
Played in San Diego?
Yeah, I think so.
What the
or
fuck?
they were there. I can't. They either played somewhere else before, and then came to that show because they were friends with Jesus Lizard.
Oh.
And so that's where I met Bill and Jessica, and they were like, later on, they tried to get in touch with me about trying to do something, with like the Jacks or something like that at the time. But then they split up.
Yeah, the two couples.
Yeah, so they split up. And so when I moved to Chicago, I got their info, and then I started jamming with Bill and Jessica, and we shared a room with like Don Cab and like a couple other people and stuff, and I'm trying to think, we never really had like anything in mind, but like, we liked the Stooges a lot, and we liked Boo Cheer a lot, and like we liked, Birthday Party, and then at the time I was really getting into like a lot of obscure kind of garage, heavy psych, like kind of this period that was still like 60s, like the Seeds, very like garage rock.
Yeah.
But then when they started getting a little bit more hairier and doing acid, and it started getting more like punk and like fuzz pedaled out, but it wasn't too proficient yet. So it was just a very specific time period, and I found all these bands that I was just like, fuck, listen to this, let's like check this out. And so we just kind of started jamming and like coming up with these like pieces, and they were just instrumental pieces, just because we never found a singer. But Bill, he helped build Electrical Audio, which is Albini's studio. So he was one of the main people like building this spot, and like he's like an electronics wizard.
Was that record recorded with Steve?
No. We did it ourselves. So he had accumulated all this free time to record, and so the whole time I was there, we never played a show. We would just jam. We never recorded, and then finally like the thing with joining Rocket came up through like Paul of Blackheart Procession. Like I'd visit and hang out with Paul when I was in town, and he'd be like, Rocket's looking for a drummer, like, would you ever be into doing that? I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm like, like I used to see the Rocket shows way early on.
Yeah.
And then I kind of fell out of touch. I think the last show I saw was like the night they dressed up as Scream Dracula Scream.
Oh yeah.
And then those pictures ended up being taken on the record. And I hadn't seen them after that.
Yeah.
So fast forward like 5 years, and Paul's like, it's been like a year, they're still looking for a drummer.
Whoa.
And like it was, they were looking for a drummer for like a really long time after Adam quit. And so I got Andy's number, and because Paul was dating Tracy at the time, and Tracy and Andy lived together at the Otra house. And then I think I got Andy's number, but I never talked to Andy, and out of nowhere I got I think I got a call from John and saying, hey, like, would you ever want to like audition or check it out, whatever. I was like, yeah, if I'm in town, whatever, we'll see what's happening. I mean, at the time I was thinking of moving back to San Diego, but like not till like a year and a half, or saving up or something. So he sent me a demo of like 4 songs that Chris Prescott played on, and I actually really liked the songs because they were kind of going back to just really straightforward, like kind of punk, like high energy rock. Yeah. So I was like, oh man, I'll definitely give this a shot. So we organized like a time to head back that I could like visit my family, and then like we could like jam, and and it right away it was just like, this is it. This is, like it felt good. Like everyone we were just like, let's fucking do this. So I moved back to San Diego way quicker than I thought I was. So with that being said, with Bill and Jessica, we're like, oh, we got to record these jams. You know?
yeah.
So we're like, let's do it. You know, so we started like really kind of honing down on what we had. We had like 6 things, and yeah, we just recorded them ourselves. We had all this time. We did a studio for a little bit, and then we're like, oh, this doesn't really work for us. Yeah. We had this nice fucking lush studio. Yeah. We're like, let's go in the B side. And then we drug out like the big old 8-track, you know, thing, and recorded in the dead room, or tried all this different shit, and, you know, kind of took our time with it. It was fun.
Oh, cool.
And then, yeah, and that's how that record came out. And then Matt A put it out.
Yeah. Do you think that band was the start of Earthless?
Yeah. It was like I was gonna say, it's like a precursor to what, you know, later on like Earthless would form. You know, because
like you got a taste of it or whatever. You're like, this is a jam. Like this.
Well, like when I hooked up with Mike Egginton back when I moved back, you know, we were just hanging out and going over like just like records we were into and stuff, and then we were like, oh, like it'd be cool to start a band that was like very specific, you know, like krautrock, and then like Japanese like psychedelic rock, you know, like Flower Traveling Band, and, you know, like Amandul, and all these like weird fucking bands. And then we're like, oh yeah, we should fucking try that out, like let's, you know. And then Isaiah was living in Oakland at the time, and when he came back down, then we jammed with him, and then that's where that fucking came from. But I was like in Rocket, so like I was full-time Rocket, so Earthless was just kind of like a couple jams here and there. But yeah, Sea of Tombs was definitely like the first instrumental thing that I'd ever done that was like heavy psychedelic rock, but it was more kind of punk tinged, like Stooges' really primitive guitar playing. Yeah, you know, and but it was cool.
I feel like that's one of the records, the Sea of Tombs records, that people just never found out about, which is a bummer. You know, it's like, man,
it came out on 9/11. Like
on
it was
the 9/11.
It was released like on 9/11. It was just like fuck, what a never forget that record. Yeah. But it was also like kind of like, I don't know, it was like kind of cryptic in a weird way to me. I was just like, ugh, like thinking of both of them combined.
Totally.
But yeah,
even the, no offense to anybody, but like the name of the band, and you know, like, it just seems like it's also instrumental, so there's not really like a specific message. It's just kind of like a vibe and a feeling or something. Yeah,
it's cool that people found out about it a little bit later on though, and people that like kind of dig backwards and they hear that and they're like, oh, this is pretty cool to hear this like pre-Earthless sort of thing that Matt did too, you know. Like I was pretty surprised that Matt wanted to put it out too, like on Gravity, you know, like so
it did seem like an odd shift from like what he was doing. What?
Big time.
Yeah. But it also, again, going back to like the San Diego vibe, it's like, whatever, do whatever the fuck you want. I mean, I think he had already like put out like a Blackheart record or something.
Yeah, or 3 Mile Pilot, maybe?
Or 3 Mile Pilot, or something. So. You're just like, okay, well, clearly anything goes, and that's great, you know. Man, that's so. The John stuff. I mean, you were doing Rocket, and then eventually he recruited you for some Hot Snakes.
Yeah. That was interesting because I was a fan of Hot Snakes, and like they weren't really a touring band during the first, like when those first 2 albums came out. They had done one tour around that second album, and I think that kind of initially started the spark of like them wanting to do the band a little bit more as a touring thing. And then Jason had just joined the Burning Brides with Dimitri, that later I played with in Off. So bad timing in that kind of scenario for him, but also like he had joined this, you know, Burning Brides had like signed to like a major label and all this stuff. And I just remember I was working one day and then I get a call from Brian Dilworth, rest in peace, and he was like, hey, got a situation. Like, what's up, dude? Like, first of all, he never used to call me back then. I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, so Jason and Hot Snakes and Jason and Burning Brides, it's like something's not working out here. So like basically there was an overlap in like the touring. So the end of the Hot Snakes tour was the beginning of this Burning Brides tour supporting Queens of the Stone Age, like on whenever that Songs for the Deaf album came out, which was like a big deal at the time. And so with them just signing on a major label and like getting this big support deal, like Dimitri's like, I don't give a fuck, whatever, like pretty much like you got to do these shows, like, you know, like fuck Hot Snakes or whatever, like, you know,
That's
like,
a crazy
and then
thing to
Jason's
say.
like, I'll just finish these shows or whatever, and then like John's like, no, you're finishing these shows, and so like Jason was kind of like, fuck, like being tugged on by like two people, like finish, don't finish, whatever. So
I mean, that's a terrible situation, but also like he's in two potentially successful avenues, you know?
So Dimitri is pretty hard-headed dude, but like, you know, he's like, the only way it's like you can finish these shows is if you get me Mario, and like to like sub for Jason on those Queens of the Stone Age shows.
Wait, so you played in Burning Brides?
Yeah, for 4 shows.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So Brian was like, yeah, come out to Philly, you know, spend like 2 weeks, rehearse with the guys. And I'd met, you know, because Burning Brides opened up the first Rocket tour. We did like a leg of shows on the very first like Rocket shows I ever did.
When you were with Rocket then?
Yeah, when I just joined. So that's where I met Dimitri in Burning Brides. And
fuck, that's crazy.
So,
okay.
So he had seen me play, you know, through that, and like, you know, and was like, and we struck up a friendship from there. You know what I mean? Like, and then so that's when he was like, you know, you get me Mario, and like whatever, and then you can finish the Hot Snakes tour, and then we'll do these shows with Mario playing. And then Jason will join up after that. So I flew out to Philly and did practice with them, and it was just like a half an hour, you know, opening slot.
Yeah.
But it was like in front of like these big venues and shit. And whatever, it was like a paid gig for me. It was cool. You know, I got to leave for a little bit.
Yeah.
Spent 2 weeks in Philly. Yeah. It was cool. But so after that, Jason was kind of like, you had to do Burning Brides because he signed on to this major label deal.
Oh shit.
And so when Hot Snakes wanted to start doing Hot Snakes as a touring thing, as a band, and I think that's when John had to fire Jason initially.
And did Jason say get Mario or
for Hot Snakes? Yeah. No, he was bummed.
Whoa.
I don't think things were good for a little bit. So he got fired. I hate using that word, whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah.
And then that's when John hit me up about playing with Hot Snakes, and then and then that was like the first Hot Snakes record that was actually really done as a band, like with Gar playing bass, because there's no bass on those first two records. It was just John and Jason.
Yeah.
So this was done like 3 of us, and then like Rick coming into the fold whenever he could, and like making a record as a full band.
Wow.
That's what I mean. It sounds totally fucking different.
Which album was the first one that
I did?
Yeah.
Audit in Progress.
Oh yeah,
that's the red one. Yeah. So, and it sounds totally different than the other 2 records.
Yeah.
So,
but that's the same with Rocket too. I mean, you can tell when it's you.
Yeah.
You know, it's just which is cool.
Yeah. But there was like people that didn't like the Audit in Progress record at first. I was like, this doesn't sound like the Wipers kind of like straightforward, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of like thing, and it was all like
yeah.
So,
people don't like change for some reason,
but now people do like the record, so I don't know.
It just took them a minute.
Yeah. But yeah, crazy how all these little things.
It is so incestuous
and then that
weird.
first Rocket tour was also the catalyst for what would later become Off.
I know.
Because meeting Dimitri on that first tour of Rocket, and then at the end of that first tour is when I met Keith, and then
like Keith just randomly or
he came to the Rocket show, like, and so we met him backstage, and he knew of Sea of Tunes. He's like, I really like that Sea of Tunes.
That motherfucker Keith Morris knows. he's like Jello, you know, like they're like, like, how do you know about, you know, the most random weirdo one-off things? Or,
yeah.
How do you know about this?
Both of those guys are like serious, deep fucking music.
Yeah.
Not even they're beyond nerds. Like just deep like music.
What is it?
Heads.
What's
like
beyond nerds?
What is beyond
guru,
nerds?
Maybe or
like,
something. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean,
music masters.
Keith's stories of like bands and the bills that he's seen are just insane.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just the lineups like Captain Beyond with Black Sabbath and Status, like just all like my favorite like bands of that era, of the big classic hard rock bands, and like, you know, just funny shit. Just like, I mean, he should just write a book on like the bands he's seen and stuff.
Wait, sorry to change
Yeah.
because you said Black Sabbath, but there's that photo of Gabe Serbian, Dave Lombardo, Bill Ward,
Oh yeah,
and Dale Crover.
I think so. Yeah.
But are you? There's a one with you too, right? There's one
Not with Bill Ward, but just with me and Gabe and Dave Lombardo, I think.
you
'cause
gave Dave
was it the first Dead
and,
Cross show?
and Dale.
Oh, and Dale.
Why were you there? Did you play? No,
Where was it? The Dead Cross show?
I guess so.
No, wait.
Oh yeah, it was Dead Cross with Napalm Death and Melvins. You were just like there?
I think I was just there.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was fucked up. But Bill Ward was there too, which was weird. And I was just like, dude, what's going on with all these drummers in
know.
one spot, man? This is
Yeah.
bullshit. Like all the best or legendary drummers. I'm like, overload. That's weird. Maybe you were doing something with in LA with Off or something at that point.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I mean, I would love to dive into the Off stuff, but I know it's kind of like a whatever, like.
No, I mean, I don't, I have nothing but like just respect and like appreciation looking back on the whole experience. I mean, like, God, there's so many books and movies that could be written with the experiences that we've all had. Some of the funniest, most fucking over the top laughing I've ever had with that band, but also some of the most frustrating and like tumultuous, odd, probably definitely the oddest, weirdest lineup band I've ever been a part of. Oh my God. Yeah. But I mean, I'm so appreciative of it, and I'm so appreciative of like when that band came into my life and everything that we fucking did, and like there's a lot of hard work that went into it, and like whatever differences of personalities that were in that band, that lineup. I mean, and they were all really fucking different. Yeah. It's what made it what it was, and for the time being, it was really cool, and I was stoked to be a part of it. I think back to what I was doing when that thing started, and that, I mean, it saved all of our lives. It saved Key's life, Dimitri's life, Steven, like we all had, like we were all doing such different things, barely like
Keith barely was
paying
doing
the rent.
Jerks.
Yeah,
every now maybe, I don't know why he didn't have that going, but like,
well, that's what it started out of. They were trying to do a Circle Jerks record, and Dimitri producing it. Yeah, and then that all went to shit because they just, the thing about Dimitri is like, love him or hate him, he'll just always tell you what he thinks. Yeah, and he, wasn't sugarcoating anything about, like what Greg Hudson was writing at the time. He was saying it's not up to par of a Circle Jerks record.
So he just said Keith was starting a new band?
No, I don't think he ever had a plan to do that, but like literally like no one was showing up to rehearsals. So like he'd be like, all right, it's Circle Jerks, let's meet up tomorrow at noon at this place, whatever, and let's fucking come up with some riffs. Yeah. No one would show up. What the fuck? They wouldn't show up. So it'd just be Keith and Dimitri laying around. And then, so Dimitri finally started picking up a guitar, or I guess, and from what Keith says, and it's like, and then Keith's like, what's that you're playing? Yeah. And so like a riff kind of came out, and then he's like, so Dimitri started like kind of coming up with riffs. And then like when Greg did come back to the room and is like, this motherfucker's trying to fucking show me riffs now? What the fuck? Like, I mean, there's like ego involved. Sure. It's like,
I mean, it's great.
Why is this guy going to show me how to fucking play my band? Yeah. It's like, gets into that, and then personalities start fucking talking, whatever, So then they wanted to fire Dimitri, and they did, and then Keith's like, well, then I'm gone. And
so he was the manager of Circle Jerks?
Dimitri? No, he was supposed to produce the record.
Producer, okay.
Yeah. And that didn't work out. I don't know. I don't know what they were going to do it for.
So as a bystander, the Off thing was really interesting to me because there was like the new, I don't know how it was like framed as like Keith Morris's new Black Flag, basically was like everybody was saying, and I was like, fuck, that's a crazy statement, and I don't want to say it's a tall order as far as like legacy, but not a tall order as far as like musicianship necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense to Black Flag, but I don't know if they've ever had like any impeccable drummers. I mean, Robo. Who was the drummer for Black? I mean, I don't know who the drummer for Black Flag was with Keith. Anyhow, it wasn't like it was never.
Yeah, with Keith it was just Robo, and then before him it was just like Brian something. I forget, but like because Keith was only in the band for like a very short time.
Yeah.
You know.
But so that was a weird thing too, because it wasn't framed as like the new Circle Jerks. It was like Keith has this new Black Flag. Well, I guess because of Off the name or whatever. So
right.
So maybe that made sense. And then it was like, you know, Vice was all about it, and it was just kind of like it seemed very fucking hip and shit. And I remember like the first time hearing it was I was like very impressed. I was like, yeah, it's like a modern Black Flag with Keith, which I think he's one of my favorite. I mean, I love the different singers in Black Flag, but I love those songs that Keith sang on. So it was crazy when Retox went on tour with you guys. It was so weird because the audience, and this is a fucking dig at fans, because I think like people that are into punk rock only want like their punk, like how they were mad about the change in Hot Snakes. It's just like get the fuck out of here, you know. So I think people like went to see Off, and they just wanted punk rock, and they just want, you know, and it was crazy to kind of look at it from like a what's the perspective that I looked at it like sort of like a, I don't want to call myself a historian, I don't want to call myself anything, but I looked at it like in this like weird view, because I could see how the fans were there for Keith,
right?
And
totally.
they didn't know who the fuck
Keith
you
fans.
Guys were. You know, I was like, dude, he's got the band right now. Like, this is better than any Black Flag lineup.
Yeah.
No, and, you know, like whatever, Black Flag was cool and stuff, but like this was the shit, and it was like really weird to see that happen. And I don't think it gave people enough time to reject it. They were just like, fuck, this is like better than Black Flag. You know?
Yeah, it was definitely a very unique pairing of
people.
yeah.
It was cool to tour with you again too. For me, it was like, man, every time I'm touring with Mario, I'm in this opening band that the fucking audience hates, you know. But whatever, it's good for me. I mean, I learned my own shit from that too. But
who else was on the bill? This is Retox,
Cerebral Ballsy.
Cerebral Ballsy, and I got up to a really fun start. I remember.
There was
like, dude, it was like one of the guys that kicked your guys' guitar cab, like they were borrowing.
Oh, they were
shit.
just wasted,
Yeah, and they were just out of their minds. Like.
I remember that. And there was another time too where I don't want to diss those guys, but they were having like an internal fight, and I remember like I felt so weird about this. They were the guitar player was like, because they were all like doing speed and shit all the time, and you know whatever. But the guitar player was like crying, and he was like telling the singer, "Why can't you be like JP?" And I was like, "What the fuck? Like this is weird. Don't bring me into the mix, man. I'm not doing drugs and fucking dicking around in a punk rock band, you know. Like we were like trying to go a whole other avenue, you know." Yeah. But yeah, we were the oddball band on that fucking tour. But whatever, you know.
Ended up being pretty good times though.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't die, it's like you look back at it and you're like, that was cool.
Right.
we didn't die. No one liked us, but it was cool. But yeah, there was a couple nights where like I remember we were in Florida, and there was it was clearly we're clearly playing to Off's crowd, which is Black Flag's crowd or whatever, you know, and like they were not having it, and this guy, I don't know how it happened, man. It was fucking weird. Either like I accidentally spit on him, or he just spit on me. But basically, we like spat at each other, and then he tried to get on stage to fight me. And he was like an older dude, and I was like, he probably could have kicked my ass, but he also might have been like too old, you know. Like so I was like, good luck. And I'm on stage, I have a microphone, like you know, like, and I just remember like it escalating, and he got thrown out, and I remember I just remember like the I had to go outside and apologize to him, but like Keith kind of stood up for me, and I was really grateful that he was like coming from it was the venue, like, you can't spit and do this to the audience, you get out there and you fucking apologize to that guy you paid. I'm like, fuck that guy, he was like talking shit and throwing stuff or spitting or whatever, and then it was kind of Keith, you know, who was like the headliner, and he was like leveled with the security and was like
mediated.
Yeah, and I was like, thank you. You know, it's like dad at that point. Thanks, dad.
Right.
You know, which is cool. I would totally take Keith as a father figure. I think he could technically be my dad. When Circle Jerks played last week or whatever it was, he was like, I'm 67 or
fuck, man,
something like that. And I was like, yeah, you could totally be my dad.
Crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, I think he was like in his like 52 or 53 when Off started, which does not seem old. I'm like already getting close to that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be 50 this year, so I'm just like, fuck.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, huh, to think about that. Like, I remember seeing 411 play at some outdoor dirt lot when I was younger, and just like, and here we are, like late 40s,
still doing it somehow.
Kind of weird. I never thought that would happen. Oh man. There you have it, episode 22 of the Cult and Culture podcast. We'd like to thank Mario for taking part. We highly suggest checking out his resume and all of the stuff he's been part of musically. That goes for drumming and guitar playing. And also just, man, check out his ripping skateboarding stuff that he's done. Check out our other episodes available on the 31G SoundCloud and also streaming on Apple Podcast, as well as some other shitty streaming services.
Cult and Culture is a Ruinous Media podcast, proudly sponsored by Earthquaker Devices, Heartwork Coffee, Fender, and Diodario.
Planet B.